First off, everything you said reminded me of myself. And I think it's interesting how athletes have a lot of connections over different sports. And when I just heard you say like D1 material, I like I had like a "that's so Raven" moment. I went immediately back into that time when I had someone tell me I'm a Division 1 caliber. But I've decided, so I kind of want to go into my bio now. I'm a D3 athlete. I am at Kenyon College. It's a small place in Ohio. It's technically a village, but I love it so much. I am a junior, a rising senior, one might say. I think I said my name a couple times. It's Celina German. It's Romanian, so that's why it's kind of funky. And what else? So I met Joni, I think I was freshman summer, so might have been or so, and I was struggling a lot with how do I deal with this new world of collegiate athletics. I just simply didn't know how to deal with it, even being a long-term athlete. And so I kind of want to mention I started competitively when I was 9. I've competed primarily for one team. It dismantled right when I got to college. I was like, oh, I'm okay, don't worry. I go back and now I train in a different place completely, 2 hours away from home. And I've adjusted to building different identities for my swimming to still feel fresh, still feel new. So I want to give you kind of the title. I have a lot of ideas and I'll kind of go from there. I hope I can do it kind of in 30 minutes. I think a lot of people who know me, I love being a chain thinker. I have a nexus of ideas and I kind of just, if you have a comment, please just put it in the chat. I will try to attend to it as possible. But that's kind of me. So the title for this discussion is Curating Identities, How Being a Historian Makes Me Swim Fast. And I can't hear anyone laughing right now, but I know that's hilarious because people who know me know that I'm trying to get a degree right now in history, and I'm concentrating in women and gender studies. So a lot of people, I'm not saying for sure that you have to be a history major to swim fast, but I've realized that is a part of my identity I like tapping into when I'm at a swim meet. And I think something really special about Kenyan athletes, student athletes in particular, they show a lot of pride of what they're majoring in. And so that's something I want to kind of address as we're learning that maybe we feel geographically limited. And how do we still like walk to a pool, which we can't, but like walk in the space of a metaphorical pool, walk into a classroom and still perform like a student, like an athlete, like a job seeker. And so it's tough because I'm using the same desk for probably how many weeks? X weeks. So before I go on, I want to say thank you to everyone who has made this possible. Joni, superstar, unbelievable woman. I think it's impressive simply how much this has like motivated me. Like everything that I've heard, I've had such bad posture all day because I've been like so leaning in. I'm like, oh my gosh, tell me more. It's an honor to be with these panel of people. So if you see me smiling a lot, it's because I'm in utmost joy. Okay, and then some other disclaimers. When I was thinking about this project, I wanted to talk about how we have multiple roles, multiple identities to create our whole experience. That's different than a stereotype. And the reason why I want to address that is because I'm going to mention, like, I want you to tap into that role as a firefighter. And then, like, people might have biases. We all have biases. So just like how we were talking with Jessica, we don't have to see a fighter as like white male or like the habitus. And so the whole time while I'm discussing this, please feel to disrupt tradition, disrupt what you think is common, because what I'm trying to say is like, think like a firefighter means think selflessly, think about their virtues, and think about how we perform an identity that we're still experiencing, still creating. So those are the kind of things. Leave questions at the end. And I want to check one more time on the participants. Thank you so much for the people who are here. You guys know who you are, and I'm really fortunate to be able to celebrate with you guys this knowledge.
Yeah.
All right.
Let me just say that you can only see the panelist.
I know.
There are participants because they're commenting, so they've been commenting a little bit.
I can't wait. So, okay. As we know, this is a very unprecedented time, but I want to talk about that as a historian. So our historical context right now addresses a pandemic, and we're thinking about kind of How do we exist in that space? How do we live in it? How do we address the issues with with being in modernity? And I want you guys to know, I didn't, like, after doing some research, I thought about it, and there are epidemiologists who have said this has been expected probably since, like, 20 years from, like, since 20 years late, I mean. And that's kind of crazy to think about, because I actually saw an article how the article is like, Kenyan colleges not first time dealing with an epidemic in 1918, 1920. But of course, we didn't live through that time. So of course, it's unprecedented to us. But think about specifically the language you're using. And so I kind of have been taking on the word COVID-19. I'm just like addressing it head on, explaining that I'm going to make it a term of positivity instead of just seeing it as like a thundercloud kind of just overarching my existence. COVID-19 is going to be something that we remember, obviously, and it's going to shape what we see. And so as we're talking about this, I want to talk about what feelings go into the newness, the uncertainty. And some things I have are, of course, feeling uncertain, feeling like you're too free, and the freedom might be worrisome, kind of being blurry, like not sure if you're getting the same experience as everyone. And that's kind of course, paralysis, timeful, timeless. And all those things are, of course, really difficult to address. So I want to say that, yes, I agree completely that they are weird times, but they aren't things that historians see as completely different. The best part about historians, I think, are that they see patterns within. They're kind of like glorified storytellers to a certain degree. And so I want to say that being able to just see the patterns that have existed in life gives you an ability to know that new to us, but not new to our human condition. So I'm going to stop there for a second. I want to make sure that everyone's able to see me because it's kind of blurry. Okay, you can see me? Okay, it kind of froze for a while, so I was like, I might have lost everyone. Okay. So yeah, I want to talk about specifically why I think uncertainty has been a most pressing, most visible emotion. And so I've been thinking a lot about, like, right now, I feel like we are at a fork in the road. I feel like we are at a place where we see a post, and there's multiple signs in it, many directions, like this way to Gambia, or this way to Columbus, Ohio, if we're in the Midwest. And I see that we are at a place where there's so many options, but we are not really remembering the options and how to organize them. And we're also, as a person traveling, kind of lost our abilities to categorize. And so I was thinking, not only are we struggling with the fork in the road, but we're struggling as travelers to believe in ourselves, to not create that doubt of, I'm taking the right path. I'm okay in my decision to go down this road, even if I mess up. And right now we are just like, I'm not taking any road. I'll wait until someone else does. I'll see if they come back. And that's tough because, I mean, like, you send a dove into this, like, path and you're like, oh, okay, come back. I'm so happy. But no, so it's tough because I think a lot of our trailblazers are also part of the people who are like, I'm going to sit back, see which path to take. And so I want you guys to believe in yourself, that you can create a table of contents for how to address. So, like, I've realized that how I am organizing my life is a little different. So I don't see the same things the same way, because I think our whole world has kind of been swept under the rug, you know? So, like, the rug has been swept beneath us. Sorry. And so I want to talk about some of the similarities, because I don't think we've addressed it. So comment in the sections if you don't believe this, but I want to say that, sorry, I will get to the Q&A at the end. So some of the similarities I've been thinking about, and we maybe don't highlight them this way because they are so different, is when I was younger, I think I was a freshman in high school, so maybe almost 6 years ago, I remember there was a series of snow days, and we weren't going to school for about, like, I think 4 days or so. And everyone was celebrating. Like the next time we got a message that we got to stay home and do nothing, and we were attending school from home, and all the messages would come through email and that we had to be at home. That was so awesome. I loved snow days. I think everyone did, right? And we don't think of this experience as a snow day because we see it as like never-ending snow days, or I'm not allowed to go outside of my house. And I think that we're struggling with seeing a similarity. Like, why is this not like a snow day? And there's, of course, a lot of logistical reasons why it's not, but I'm thinking try to ponder that question. And so with that in mind, I want you guys to think about what sort of identity you've been using to be tactical and just like surviving this, thinking about what to act forward in. And so I was talking to my mom. I went downstairs, and when I go downstairs, I'm technically daughter. So like I think about that too, like the roles of like, okay, after I leave this room that's like been Kenyan infused, I'm trying to make this as much as like my Kenyan dorm. But anyways, I went downstairs and my mom said to me, I'm so happy you're doing this webinar, sorry, everything is a seminar, is because I can't believe anyone is doing anything beneficial other than speaking about Corona. And I thought about that when she said it, because she said it in a way that like, to not think about Corona right now is crazy, because right now her whole role is about it. So that's why I wanted to address it as a anecdotal segue, I guess, into what she is. So in that moment, even though she was wearing her gardening clothes, so she loves gardening, she's obsessed with it. I don't think she stayed inside most times, just stays outside and then disinfects and then comes inside. But even if she was in her gardening clothes, which I think are a main marker of showing your role, like you are often performing through your clothing. I have a little funny story at the end about my clothing that I'm wearing. But she was wearing her gardening clothes, yet she was still in the role of doctor. So she is on pager. She's constantly being asked to have televisits. And so even though her body presented herself as a gardener, someone who should be relaxed, showing that they're kind of addressing like the foliage outside, it was still that she was like, I'm only thinking about Corona. And I could see that. I could see how people are blending both of those things. And that's totally fine too, right? But I knew that she wasn't categorizing it. She didn't have a table of contents like, oh, I'm right now gardener, or right now I'm the role of doctor. And I can see that like how she's like rushing to the like 5:30 office hour that she has, and like she's seeing how she's organizing her time differently. Her time schedule is different. Everyone's time schedule is different. And so as I say this, we are constantly, there's two truths to this. Change is constant, and that we still have agency in this matter. So even though news is kind of trying to explain to us what to do, totally agree, if they didn't have a demographic to express the news to, they would be also out of line. So we constantly have agency in every matter. It depends on what degree. And so I want you guys to think about your agency as you're trying to make choices to your decisions of how you portray yourself, perform this identity. And so I said change is constant and you have agency. For that reason, we got to be constantly aware that we're curators of our identity. So just like how museum curators are in charge of showing the pieces in a certain way, they are in charge of how you're going to have that experience in the museum. I also love museums, if the nerd in me doesn't already show. But even though we are able to curate our experience, we have habitus, we have tradition. And those are two things that I think we need to discuss, because those two can be wonderful dynamic experiences and events, elements, but they are attached to limiting factors of our society. So habitus, I mean that because there is a certain habitual decision making that we expect. So for example, right now, as a daughter, the role of a daughter, I have to look to my parents for authority. What I want to say is, how are we kind of able to dismantle our habitus? Because these are unprecedented times, I've mentioned that. So then why are we using our habitus to create the same outlook? Like, we got into a place where we are unsure of the reality. Why are we not using creative solutions to do that? So the the reason why I mentioned tradition too is because a lot of people say, like, tradition says that you are not going to talk above your parents and out of line. I agree with that. I would totally agree. But I think people forget how tradition is influenced by modernity. The traditions at Kenyon College, for example, used to be that it was an all-male school. I go to Kenyon College and I do not identify as a male individual. So how's that tradition? There used to be a pajama party apparently in the winter season where they would go out in their pajamas. That is not tradition anymore. Tradition is dynamic, diffusive, elevated. And so we have to think that even though tradition kind of sometimes are those shackles on our feet as we're walking through this, we need to think outside of the box. And we do that from the identities we ascribe to and the identities we create right now. So I want to start with what the second half of my title is. So why does a historian make me swim fast? I mentioned already Kenyan swimmers and student athletes in particular are really proud of what they study. There's more passion coming out of my capstone project, my senior project, than sometimes what I'm doing in swimming, because Kenyon has conditioned me to play the role as a historian. I'm really happy to play that role. I call myself a historian. I apologize also. I don't have a degree yet, but I am still in that envisioning where I see myself as a historian so much that I've already kind of embodied that role. So just like how I'm not a parent, but I already have made decisions to what I want to tell my kids, what I want to tell my grandkids, and that's nowhere in the future. It's just how we condition ourselves to how we're going to react because of what we've experienced. Like my parents said something to me, I'm like, I'm definitely not saying that to my kid. I lock it in, I put it in that box. And so we are constantly, the way we respond, the way that we breathe, the way that we react and expect, those are how we curate the new identities, and we condition ourselves to that. Little short story. Before I was able to even be on the national team as a sophomore, I'm a junior now, I called myself a national team qualifier. Joni helped me with this so much. You better nod your head. I literally called myself national team qualifier so much that my parents were like, could you stop using the third person? I'm like, you are so proud of me because you gave birth to a national team qualifier. Like, I would imagine everything. I was like, this is the water bottle of national team qualifier. And I did that because I don't think, so I'm going to use Beyonce because I always use Beyonce as an example. I don't think Beyonce started when she was born, obviously saying, I'm Beyonce, I'm this amazing performer. I think she had to think of that before she even was. And Michael Jordan and all those other people that I can't name right now. So I want to say those are the reasons. So my pre-race ritual. So before I swim, I think constantly of what are my skills as a historian that allow me to kind of take me out of the swim space. Because I've swam for so long, I can overthink anything if you give it to me for just 3 minutes. So the way I think about it and the way I'm proud that I'm like creating these new skills are I am the best at comparing timelines between different thematic approaches. So let me explain that. I can tell you about what happened in pre-modern Korea, what happened in Black America Reconstruction period, and then I can go to, let's go Romania at the Civil War. That's not a thing. Romania right at World War II. I can think about gender in all of those perspectives because I have the ability to think thematically, gender here, gender there, gender there. And I love doing that because I think our brain works like that. So right before my race, this is my pre-race ritual. I'm not sure if it helps everyone in the audience, but I think about that skill. And I found a way that I can create that, my pre-race ritual. Right before I'm behind the blocks, I remind myself this is not the only place in the universe that exists right now. It might be 5 p.m. at my pool, my arena, but I think about, and I also apologize, I don't think about time zones. So everywhere in the world right now is 5 p.m. That is the only rule that I have to abide by, okay? So I think about what does 5 p.m. look like for my great aunt that lives in Romania. Okay, she's cutting up carrots because she's going to be giving it to her son, sorry. And then I think about 5 p.m. what it looks like for the people I interned with. and I'm like, man, they're coming home because they definitely like leaving at 5 p.m. And I know specifically what car they're going into, and then they go in and turn on the light. I think about 5 p.m. for my cousin. My cousin's probably driving home, and he's thinking about that he really wants to do virtual reality. I think about the 5 p.m. for these young kids that I coached, and maybe 5 p.m. doesn't even exist because they're, I don't know, eating Cheez-Its and like they're super excited. I think about 5 p.m. in a lot of different places. I think about this one woman that I met on an airplane that I've become best friends with. She lives in Kenya. I wanted to tell you the joke that I said I'm from Kenya and she's from Kenya, and so I always make that joke. She would be probably right now checking her Facebook because she's the best Facebooker I've ever seen. And so I think about all these moments. It's really quick. I shift through them a lot. And I also add, like, who should I think about next at 5 p.m.? And I think about that because I don't want to be the only thing existing in that moment. I want to think about all the lines that are going on. And that humbles me. And it also clears the space. One of the worst feelings in the world is when time's ticking down to the event. They're going to blow the whistle. And they're going to say, okay, you're now constricted to this one lane. And man, everything's like coming in and coming in and coming in. I don't need that. I've realized I don't need that. And so I wanted to explain that because I do this a lot. I like disrupting normalcy, because I love unexpected, unconventional combos. And so I wanted to give you an example of some other combos that I probably do in my life, and they've helped me kind of be who I am, and take it or leave it, but I think that they've helped me. So these are the expected combos. I put them as swimmer at swim meet. These are identities with the place. So swimmer at swim meet, racer at swim meet, intern at internship, student employee at library research job. I work at the library. Co-host at webinar, top swimming recruit on recruitment day. And then I want to tell you, I've wrote them all out again as how I perceive them, how I've been able to show a little bit more of everything I am by just highlighting another person, like another shade of my identity. So, daughter at swim meet. The reason why I say daughter at swim meet is if my parents are there, I want to know that even if I used to cry a lot at swim meets because I was always sad. But I say I'm always a daughter at swim meet because I know my mom's going to be proud if I get out of that pool. And that's something that's really impactful for me. I'm like, I got to remember that I don't only swim the role of swimmer at this moment. Historian at swimming. I already told you that one. Athlete at internship. I think about how I was one of the first people to always be at my internship and on time because I had morning practice already. I showed up and I was already ready to go. There were some people who stroll in at 9. I'm like, are you kidding me? I am diligent about my time. I'm using my athletic mentality, and that's how I represent myself. Best friend at my library research job. The reason why I say that is because it's kind of awkward always to go up to a research person and ask for help. So you go up to the desk kind of like at circulation or at any library, and you're like, hey, I really don't know where to start my research project, and I just need kind of a person to help me. I want to show them they shouldn't worry, and I want to be their best friend at that moment, even if they're never going to see me again. That's how you have to expend the virtues of just being there for someone. Competitor at this personal webinar, and that's where I'm going to show you my shirt. I'm not competing with anyone, please. Let me rephrase that. But I'm showing up at 5 p.m. I'm pretending that I'm at a competition, and this is finals. I've been here since 9, and I've been kind of not sleeping well, so I kind of in and out. But I was happy that I woke up. I'm going to pretend this is a meet, and so I wanted to show you my favorite shirt. It's Team Indiana Spring OTC Club, and then it says Trial to Tokyo. Tokyo is kind of a buzzword right now. I don't want to address that. But I want to say this is a shirt that someone addressed to me, and they gave it to me because they believed that I could actually go to Tokyo. And so I was invited to an Olympic training center. I represented Team Indiana, only 50 men and women. No, 50 men and women combined. And so somehow they picked me. That's crazy. And I was like, I've never worn this on a meet. I decided that this is actually going to be what my game day looks like. I'm wearing the athletic training pants because this is game time. And that's how I want to show you, like, how do you show up for the things, and maybe they look different right now. So right now for me, student at schoolwork doesn't register. Not interested. Being a student doesn't feel like school. And so what I'm thinking is like published author at school. And that's because I'm trying to make new opportunities. I'm trying to reach out and think like, one day I really want to be a published author. And so how am I using those writings that are going to eventually maybe be published? So that's kind of what I've been thinking about. I'm going to give you one more because I need to move on. Top swimming recruit at Thanksgiving Day. And so you're like, what? That makes no sense. And I'll explain because usually I don't. But I sent my first recruiting email to like 50 coaches or so on Thanksgiving Day. So I apologize. I hope I'm not offending anyone in the audience that I don't celebrate Thanksgiving like you do. But that day is still a work day for my family. It means that we like celebrating, like having that day off to do whatever we want. I chose that day. I was like, you know what? This is a day on for me. I would love to have a moment where I can just finish these emails. And I was like, I was the subject line, Happy Thanksgiving, like so thankful for you. And I was realizing I'm showing a version of my identity that's maybe something different than they saw in other. So that's the last one. And then I want to go into the 3 tips that I think I can give to you to address how are you sifting for your identity and creating new identities as you learn that you're not in this paralysis. You're able to be in decide what you want to perceive yourself as. So my favorite one is show and tell. I have 2 water bottles. These are my 2 water bottles. One was issued to me. There's a sticker, of course, because Celina loves stickers. One of them is from NCAA's Division III, has been issued to me. Body Armor was the drink of choice, and a lot of NCAA athletes who use it are really proud because they made the event. So this one of the reasons why I wanted to go to nationals. I'm sorry, it sounds a little bit materialistic. Here's my other one, Hydro Flask, and it was purple one time. So there's tons of stickers on here. I know all of my teammates have seen the ridiculous amount of stickers. The one I'm going to show you that I think is the nerdiest. I also heard that this is historically inaccurate, but please bear with me. It says, I also don't cuss often, but crap. That's due tomorrow? ? And it's Thomas Jefferson. And then it says Thomas Jefferson, July 3rd, 1776. And that's the day before the Declaration of Independence, I believe. I'm also not that, like, founding fathers historian, but please bear with me. What I'm trying to say is everyone worries about finishing an assignment on time. And the reason why I have those 2 water bottles is because I use them in 2 different roles. This is my school water bottle, and this is my swimming water bottle. Truth be told, I don't use them that way because I know that's what's expected of me. So Celina, of course, trying to mix things up always. This is my school water bottle. This is my water bottle, my swimming water bottle. And the reason why I say this is because I need myself to remember that I think outside the box. I'm creative. I put in here all these things about like thinking about the gender binary and thinking about like how are we disrupting the patriarchy, all these crazy stuff that you don't think about during swimming. That's how I think during history classes and academia. I want to be something that's memorable. I want a legacy, and I think about it in this water bottle. This one reminds me that if I'm not diligent with my work and I lollygag and then I get on this track of, thinking about fighting the patriarchy, and then I get on another topic about discussing women equality, and I realize if I'm not diligent, if I don't set aside time for this practice and writing, all those writing practices of turning in an assignment, if I don't show up to the meet, don't show up to the event, I miss the deadline. So I'm constantly trying to show you might have things that are 2 things that are similar. I think a lot of people have 2 water bottles, but think about the similarities in your life that you can show up and mix right now, because that's what we need in our life. We got to mix it up. Here's some, of course, grain of salt issues. So grain of salt advice. You never want to mix up your work phone and your personal phone. Those want to make sense. You want to get anything out of that. You would be less organized. You'd get your personal email, cupcakelover101@gmail.com, to this big business email, right? You don't do that. There's ways to show that you are pulling skills from other things, but you're not like acting silly. Like you go up to a professor and then you act like they're your father and you say like, what's for dinner, Dad? No, you don't do that, obviously. But you can treat your professor with empathy like your father. Like, oh, I know he's probably having a hard time. Got to make sure that he's doing well and show empathy. They don't live in only this professorial role. They have so much more than them. They're a father. They could be, I'm also pretending it's a male professor right now. Father, uncle, grandfather, like firefighter. Again, all these things they can be. And we limit ourselves when we see people only in this role. So that's why I kind of wanted to show you a little bit outside of the box. I don't present like this often, but I was like, I'm going to show you what swimmer me right now is doing. How do I use my swimmer skills? Okay, the next tip I have is spaces in your house. So rooms in particular. That's what a space in your house is, a room. So I want to say that I know we're geographically limited. We do not have geography on our side, and that's still okay. So I go to the pool to relax and think like a swimmer. I go to my house on break so that I can be my lovable self with my family. I go to my dorm to study a lot. And so we have these roles in our life that we place identity with. And so right now we don't have that. We're living on top of each other. That's fine too. I want to say there are rooms probably in your house that are always just been this room. Like this room, only a bedroom. But I started thinking, this used to be my parents' bedroom. I have no clue why they would pick it. It's so small, like I barely can live in here. But I'm saying this used to be a bedroom. This also used to be a bedroom / take care of the new dog room. It's on the second floor. It's a wing. Makes no sense. Talk to my parents about it. Kame used to live. He's 13 now. Kame used to be really, really small, and we thought this like little wooden box would help him. Dogs don't live in wooden boxes. We learned that the hard way. But I'm saying this used to be a place where we thought differently. This room used to be a place that we thought differently. And so I want you to think, what rooms right now in your house are same old, same old. You go to the kitchen, of course you're going to find a sink there. You should, I hope. But how do you make that a different space? My mom, again, gardener, doctor, amazing woman. You probably know her. So what she does, I come downstairs to eat. I've been kind of marathoning in this amazing webinar. I come downstairs, I want to eat something. I have to be polite, I'm a daughter. I see her with a weighted hula hoop in the middle of our kitchen, close to touching the blender, like knocking it off the counter, right? So she has this weighted hula hoop. She's hula hooping in the kitchen. I'm like, Mom, what are you doing? Trying to be polite like a daughter should be. I say, what the heck? So she doesn't like when I say what the heck, apparently too vulgar. I'm like, what the heck, Mom? And she's like, I'm exercising. What? And she didn't see a problem with changing the kitchen for that moment to be exercise oriented. And so my mom has that ability, like she shifts so quickly. So I thought that was crazy because we don't often, a room or probably our house we've lived in, if we're fortunate, we've lived in it for a long time. We've lived out the spaces. We've outlived the spaces that we are currently in. All these decorations. I told my friend, I think she's actually on the participants. I'm calling her out, Caitlin Perry, childhood friend. And I told her, I was like, I think the last time I decorated this was 4th grade. This room reeks of Celina in 4th grade. And so I've decided, with her help, to actually change the room. Why am I letting myself just say this advice and not taking it for my own? So I'm trying to change the rooms. So how do you actually make an exercise room right now when you didn't have one? My room, my parents don't like exercising. I don't even like exercising. So I'm trying to dismantle those things. On break, I usually don't work out. What does that mean? Last one, and then I think I'm going to wrap up. I think, okay, 32 minutes. And so I want to say, you have the ability also, as you're making new identities and as you're highlighting different identities, how are you responding to people? So right now, I have the ability, if my dad says something about Kenyan, I often say, you're wrong. I know everything about Kenyan. I go there. I'm being educated. Don't even. So yesterday I was like, you're wrong. I didn't even think. Before it came out of my mouth, I said, you're wrong. I realized, what identity am I doing? That's the identity of younger Celina who loved to put up a good debate. And I realized I wasn't being the like person who waits in line, who has been conditioned to like be quiet in a seminar. And that's because, of course, that room has always been like a family room. It's always been expected that like this is the role I play in, younger daughter, kid, and parent. So even if my dad doesn't want to say this, I'm kind of close to equal. Like I'm trying to elevate my intellect so that I matches his. And so I decided that another way to mix things up right now, as you're creating new identities, take inanimate objects, swipe them like water bottles, take rooms, swipe them, different identities. And then the last one, responses. In that response, I should have said, Dad, you know what, you're right. And not lie. I mean, like, he had to be right in some degree. I can't just like all of a sudden flat out lie, because again, that would be terrible. So that's what I want you to do. What would, as you are in your roles in society, and even if you're in new roles that you've decided you've just now entered, how would you expect that person, that new identity you're creating, to act? How would they breathe? How would they walk? And so the last one I'm going to give that I think makes sense is, my dad used to tell me, Celina, what if you are Dara Torres? And Dara Torres is a very great Olympian, 5 or 6 Olympics, unbelievable. She beat me 5 times getting to the Olympics. I'm just kidding. And so it's, my dad once, he's like, I want you to believe that you're Dara Torres. I want you to actually, mind you, I'll never be Dara Torres because she's a separate person. But I was like, I'm going to respond like I'm Dara Torres. I'm creating this identity of a well-seasoned Olympian, conditioned to not even breaking a sweat at like a great international meet. I was like, I got this. This is a dual meet with my high school team. I'm Dara Torres. And the best part is no one needs to know. So I think the role playing that we create and like understanding that everyone has an inner artist, it just looks different, is the ability to know these identities address. And I hope some people were suggestive to the language, seeing like there's all these different versions of ourselves that are there, that we, fortunate enough for English, have common terminology to explain: the artist, the poet, the sibling, the kid. And they all feel different to every person, which is the best part. But I hope that some of these messages came across. And the last thing I'm going to actually take you to is saying, what are my natural reactions right now in COVID-19? So my natural reaction, I'm just going to shout out, no, I guess at me, I guess is the correct term. I'm just going to let myself out there. I'm going to take so many days off. I've done that. I've realized that COVID-19 has made me feel that that's natural. And I want to disrupt that. I want to say, like, that's a different identity I'm taking on. No reason to rush out of bed. You're right. It doesn't feel like there's urgency right now. How do I create that spring out of your bed excitement again? It's going to be different. It's COVID-19. School can be postponed. I'm sorry, but I'm a really good scholar to a certain degree. And I still struggle with that. I still see that there's this postponement because delayment. But I'm saying that because time feels unlimited. And I want you guys to, if you ever feel that way too, like, remember, you can disrupt those because we have agency and change is constant. So my last thing that I want everyone to kind of, people that are swimmers, athletes, colleagues, and parents, I want you guys to leave knowing, stay hungry, always adapt, and have fun. So I'm ready to listen to people and check the Q&A. So let's see. How exactly do you assign positivity, though? Do you just force yourself through it and get into a better mental state, or do you try to find silver linings? And if so, what are they? That's a great question. I love someone who argues with me. I'm not saying it's an argue, but I love that was pushing what I'm just saying. Don't take it at face value. I totally agree. So, people can hear me, right? I don't have to type the answer back. Answer live, right?
It can hear you. Yes.
I'm answering live, guys. Cool.
Of course you are. That's great.
So I think to a certain degree, we have to pick identities that exude or radiate to a certain degree of positivity. So I say historian and I'm like, oh, like that makes me excited. Someone hears historian, they're like, I'm out, I'm so tired. Like, I'm so exhausted by the idea that you just said historian. Like, get away from me. But I think for everyone, like chemist, adrenaline junkie, like all those things that like actually like give you a certain degree of positivity is assigned to a certain memory. So I might not be using the right term, and I never want you to force yourself through it. I think there's ways to train yourself into seeing like historian be a good thing. Like for a while I was like, history used to be at the beginning some of my worst grades at Kenyon, which is like, my dad's like, can you just pick another major? Like, what's wrong with you? No, I want to condition myself to see that history is actually something that I want to. So swimming never was actually something that made me excited. I had to train myself into seeing an excitement in swimming. Do you try to find silver linings? That's kind of my mentality, but the problem is, as we talked, like paralysis, it's real. Like if you're not in the moment, like specifically yesterday, I watched so much YouTube, I thought my eyes were gonna fall out. And the reason why I did that is because I didn't want anyone to give me a job. I wanted to do something mind-numbing. I didn't want to think about school. I didn't want to think about the paper I had to write. And there's no silver lining jujitsu happening at all.
Well, Celina, let me just refer back to
Yes.
Ron's talk when he talked about freeze mode. You were not actually in freeze mode, but you were intentionally making that choice to take a time out and take care of yourself. And I think you've learned a lot about that, actually.
Yeah.
And the first question when she said, how do you assign positivity? And do you force yourself? Well, I think that's one of the best thing that I've seen you learn is that you can, in a fun and easy way and simpler, more creative ways, do that. Get your shift, make the shift and get things turned around. And you have an extremely, I don't know how well the person knows you that asked the question, but you have an extremely creative side to you. And you've learned to use that in different areas of your life, so many different areas of your life. Whereas you have a tendency to be so academic, you also have that really fun, creative side. And that's what we started talking about at 9 o'clock this morning.
Yeah.
Is expanding identities.
Mm-hmm.
And really understanding what it is we get up and work so hard for every day. You know, what's at the core of that? What is at the core of that? You know, yeah. And that is, and part of yours is being a historian, right?
Yeah, I think that we have to find, like, I believe everyone is in charge of making their dictionary of positive terms. I think everyone is in charge of finding those excitements. I do agree, sometimes it's hard. Like, if my mom didn't take me to the Indiana Historical Society when I was 14, this love of history could have been completely delayed. Like, it matters a lot on the interactions with other people that I've had for me to finally pick up the pen and say, this is my affirmation. This is the way I describe myself. And I think we often make these ideas of ourselves already. So like, I think a lot about swimming when people say, I'm a freestyler, I'm a flyer. And I know that people who have been recruited have a spiel of like, really quickly, how do you explain to someone what they are? And when you're introducing myself, you want to hear mine? Okay. So hi, I'm Celina German. I'm a sprint freestyler. I'm considering at that time physics and history. Nice to meet you. And so I think all of us are limiting. I have actually one other thing I want to mention. So I've been in a lot of different swimming spheres, and one of them that I realized I can actually also shape up, kind of juggle, is what does collegiate and age group or like club swimming look like? So sometimes I'll pretend I'm a collegiate swimmer at a club meet, or sometimes I become an age group swimmer at college. And the reason why I say that, and for the people who are watching, age group, it's super fun. Like, people are like sometimes thinking it's a social event. Like, they're not after it, but there are some that of course are trying to get those great times. And then another one is a collegiate swimmer. They cheer their butt off, like unreal. Like, there is this solidarity with a team. They sometimes club swimmers don't do, because they're in and out. They don't feel obligated. How do you create that? And so sometimes I do is I actually bring some of the cheers I know from my club team to Kenyan. Do they always register? Do they start doing them? No. But I'm saying that some of those club teams need to see that. Like, I still know the Team Indiana cheer, and I know that tempo can be addressed to something else. How do you kind of just take all of the things that are in your life and shuffle them? Like, I think that's what we feel right now. We are being shuffled. And yeah, I think to say to Luis's point, I think we put ourselves in boxes too much. And I think we can do that with specifically words. And so words are great and all, but then I think we talked about this actually earlier today. We have to make up new words. We live in a postmodern moment, and we have to, like, uncontrollable is technically not a right?
Technically, it's not a word.
Another thing I want to say to that.
I've been using it for years. I love making
exactly.
it.
I was like, Microsoft Word, you don't know anything. Like, what the heck?
Sure.
Sorry.
Like, yeah, the knowingness.
Exactly.
You have this knowingness of, yes.
And so then I want to say that remind yourself that, like, as we say, pandemic, uncertain times, and then kind of saying also words like my swimming career. I talked to Joni a little bit about this outside of this webinar, but when you say, like, my swimming career is put on hold, my athletic career is put on hold, gosh, don't you have a career as being a daughter and, like, always being a great child? That's a career. I don't think I addressed it enough, but we got to remind ourselves that these words that might honestly be descriptors at one time also act as guidelines we don't need, as highways that we are driving on that we just somehow put ourselves onto. We got to be open to the space right now because everything is up in the air. So work with that, live in that cloud.
It is a great time to expand, isn't it?
Yeah.
And this whole concept of expanding our identities, and we don't have to work very hard. It can be very playful. And as we've seen all day long, there's so many different techniques and ways of shifting from one mental state to another so quickly. And that's why I love the question that you got earlier. Do you have to force yourself? Thankfully, no. We can change our mental state. We can change the way we're thinking in a matter of minutes.
Yeah.
And sometimes less than, say, 2 minutes, just by using some of these techniques that flood both hemispheres of the brain. Put up that pattern interrupt, because you're in a bad place, a place not necessarily terribly bad, that it's bad that you feel maybe sad, disappointed, because there's a lot of that, scared, all of those things, but we don't want to stay there. So that, and sometimes it makes sense to put that on the shelf and switch from one state to another. And then maybe you'll go back to it, maybe you won't. Most times we won't go back to something like that. But we've had numerous demonstrations today to show how quick and easy that can be. And I love that question, because it shows that there are people that are curious and interested in knowing how. It's easy to say, be positive. Well, how? Feel better. How? Think, change your mindset. How? And so that's what we wanted to do today. And also so that we're not limited, to avoid limitations, because that's how we feel right now. We have tendencies to think about what we can't do, what we can't do, what we can't do, what we're not going to get, what we're, how things are not going to be the same. We can change that by actually opening up more space in our identity, more ideas about what we can do. I have for so long said this about many things. I would love to do that, but I don't have time for it.
Yeah.
Well, I meditated and I thought about it, and I made it like what I call a laundry list of things that I've wanted to accomplish, but due to traveling and all the things I enjoy and want to do, I haven't been able to. Well, now this is a great opportunity. So now I am someone who paints an upstairs closet.
Yes.
My identity is expanding, by the day, by the moment. I am now someone who is able to, well, I will say I was capable before, but I am now someone who makes the decision to get a group of amazing, excellent people together who have talent and great ideas to share with as many people at no cost information that will help them. See that? And so again, this identity, these I am statements are expanding, and that's important, because if for some reason I'm fortunate enough to have a job where I can communicate and I can work like this, but if I wasn't, what do I do? It's that moment, just what everyone's feeling, right?
Yeah, yeah.
The way we felt when we heard, when we went to the store even, and there's no bread or toilet paper, it's just like, it's so unfamiliar.
Yeah.
But unfamiliar territory,
yeah,
and limitations sometimes just put us in that great challenging place that we need to be.
Yeah.
So that we become more familiar with doing.
I think we got actually a comment. So someone asked, so like a change of perception. And the reason why I think that is correct is because I brought you guys my handy dandy stapler. It was over there. But I want to say that what I hope to present in this conversation is that we are mentally reframing. We are mentally rewiring. And so what that means, literally reframe, use the frame differently, or rewire, change the wiring up. But it's the same thing, make the lighting still work, right? So I'm taking the same item. And some people I know, office supply aficionado, so just bear with me. Some people like stapling like this. Some people like stapling like this. So let me explain. Some people staple with one hand. These people are maybe on the go. They're doing something different. And then there's the other people who lay it on the desk and they'll do the two hands, right? That's just reframing the same skill of stapling. So I'm saying take the same item, whether that's be a water bottle, like always seeing this as just the swimming water bottle limits you. Like, I actually want to take it around school. I want to be up on the hill. That's what we say when we're at Kenyon College. So up on the hill, I want to use this water bottle. I want people to know that I'm a national athlete. And so we're taking the same item that has honestly the same function. Don't change the function. Just use the same item and think about it differently. So here's another one. I'm going to embarrass myself. Here's a portrait of a fish. This was not supposed to be. This is impromptu. Okay, so there's a portrait of a fish, okay? This is also a portrait of a fish. It's just reframed. It's re-identified. So yeah, of course this doesn't make sense, but then you're thinking, whoa, does that mean the water is like upstream or like downstream? This is, of course, what we're expected to see. No one ever says change the look of it. And then people are like, what about this? So there's always ways to look at the same item from a different perspective. If that means just looking, like taking the thing and like turning it, dude, you're already like ahead of the game. So I think that we see identities in such a limited role. So like the role of, I keep on saying daughter. Maybe that means docile. Maybe that's expected to be dependent, meaning to make cookies with mom. None of those actually mean daughter. It's how you have assigned definition to it. And so like maybe now my mom and I, we ride trucks around. I don't know. I'm thinking about masculine things. My mom and I actually teach her how to do some mathematical skills. Like I'm in the position of teaching her something. After this, I'm going to explain to her pH and diets and all that stuff because I'm able to adapt our relationship. So that's again, like reframe how things have been because we are in a place where if we address it the same way as we did yesterday, we're not living differently. So if anyone has any other comments, I'm ready to answer them. But that's pretty much what I got.
Hey, somebody said that we're all just specks in the universe.
Yeah, let's talk about that.
I am so excited to be a speck in this universe.
Pretty lucky.
Yes, yes.
I think that, so yes, there's truth to that. And then there's also the ability to like, so every speck in this universe still has agency. Bear with me. there's a speck of dust probably coming down right now as it's coming into the frame. I'm going to sneeze my head off. I'm really allergic to dust. That has agency over me. I think let's just take dust bunnies are winning the race in allergies right now with me. And so thinking about how does the specks in the universe, like the truth is someone right now in Bangladesh doesn't know that I'm presenting. And this is my whole world right now. I might be really proud that I did as much advertising that I'm doing this, but there are a lot of people who didn't show up, right? And so great, we are specks in the universe, allows me to do everything I want, live in my little sphere. But then it's also super cool that everyone else has that ability to be kind of sized down. I kind of know one colleague that's on here gave me the idea of zooming in and zooming out. He's like, you got to zoom in from this perspective, you got to zoom out. And I remember when he told me that, he was a sophomore, he was a freshman. I was a sophomore. I was like, dude, don't try to teach me anything. I was not open to reframing that discussion. So it's really true.
Well, that's interesting because what I've learned about you is you are optimistic and you are quite willing to learn new things. And that's been great. And that's, you've come a long way since we first met.
I think so.
Because I think too, I think you were in a place where, and I know the hypnotists on here will appreciate that, where you weren't too sure about what kind of work I might be doing.
I apologize, Joni, but that is true.
No, no need to apologize. I actually love starting in that place because it gave me an opportunity to show you and to teach you that it's just the brain. We're just learning about the brain and how it works. And once you find out that, there's that critical factor that gets in your way of being able to, learn about and develop new habits and replace those old habits that were making you miserable, then, it does sound kind of weird if you're not familiar with it. So once we learn about how hypnosis works, and we've talked about that today and back up to 9:00 and on, and everyone will have a chance, because this will be recorded, to go back and watch some of those.
On Joni's website, super cool graphics. Check it out.
Yes, I think that that'll help answer a lot of these questions too. Because if you didn't see the different presentations, you may have questions, and that makes sense. But we were happy to and always happy to dispel that myth that hypnosis is some mind control. I wanted to play a clip, but we didn't have time today, where I was at a huge event. It's called Soccer X, and I think you remember that. I had a chance to reach 80,000 people in Marlins Park, and gives.
It's really popular.
Well, it was it was fun to give that message, but I was able to sit. I had a booth where I could actually have people come in, and I could hypnotize them or have them listen to some of my audios if I was working with other people when I wasn't doing my main stage talk. So what I loved is I started gathering information. I said, what do you think hypnosis is? And I wrote down the answers, and oh wow, I knew some of them, but it really, because there were people, it was international, and there were people from different countries. There are some very, very seriously disturbing perceptions about it. And, but that's okay, because it gave me a chance in my talk to clear it up. And so that's what I started with is, I understand you may think hypnosis is, and went through the long list. And then I said, but if intellectually and scientifically, if you just understand that it's your brain and it is how the brain works, and it is absolutely a modality that will help you learn more quickly and have those habits rest more permanently in the subconscious mind, then people accept it very well. But it's just there's a lot of misperceptions, and just a lot of the only perception that someone may have because they've seen the movies or whatever it might be. So and we've used a lot of other techniques, we've done together.
I think that honestly, I see a little bit of like my original personhood, I guess, in the first comment, because I came to you in a really, like, I was in a really dark place. And I realized, I was like, I don't even know if I want to continue collegiate athletics. And that was before I made nationals. That's before I was really proud of being on the record board. Granted, all these things I just never knew because I was past the point of believing I can get there. So I just want to say, yeah, I think that how do we as individuals, or like the role of the skeptic, how do we actually like remember we have the role of the optimist in us too, right? And I was dishing out skepticism all the time at the beginning. I think that was the problem. Like we talked a little bit at the beginning of all this webinar, there's the critical faculty, right? And so there are things in our body that tell us not to act like that kid in the classroom. But then there's also times when we forget on accident when we were younger and we are a kid in a classroom and we say, hey, mom, when we meant the teacher, right? And so there's that playfulness and that subconscious that we are constantly training. I'm constantly training on how to be with good etiquette, even though I sound like a YouTuber right now. But I'm saying that like we constantly are conditioning ourselves to how we are presenting and how are we performing. If we think of gender as a performance too, right? All these things. And so I think we have to remind ourselves that there are things that are subconscious. And yeah, all the audios, I really recommend it. I want to actually, this is my contact. I was wondering if it was going to mirror. This is my contact info, German one.
Oh, I could see it the other way.
Really?
Mm-hmm. There you go.
German one at kenyon.edu if you want to reach out to me. And then audio, so everything's going to be recorded, you said around like Monday on the Aim for Success website.
Yes, so it's aim-for success.com. I'll be posting that as well.
Okay, yeah. I just want everyone to know how awesome Joni is. Like, circulate knowledge when you can. Like, remind yourselves you're also the role of a teacher right now. So